Today I'm going to be showing you how to retouch skin but keep things looking natural, so we can take an image that looks like this and change it into something that looks like this. If you're new here and want the latest tips, tricks and tutorials for all of the Adobe suite, please click subscribe followed by the bell. So as I said, today we're going through natural skin retouching, and there are lots of different ways and techniques of doing this, but I'm going to show you what I would recommend, and you don't need to be an expert, you can easily follow this step by step. So the first thing we're going to do is take the picture. I've left the link for this picture down in the description below if you want to follow along with the same picture. But the first thing we're going to do is make a copy of the background layer. So if you click on the background layer here, hold Ctrl and press J, and that will duplicate it to a new layer. Now there are many different tools we're going to use, and they're all good for different things, but we're going to start with the healing brush, maybe a bit of the patch tool, then we're going to do some dodge and burn and add a little tiny bit of blur followed by a filter. So we'll start with the healing brush. You should find it on your toolbar here. If for any reason you don't, just click and hold the three dots there and you'll see all the other tools and you will have it in there. So if we start with the healing brush, now brush size, I would keep it as small as you can. Keep it small but still enough to cover what you're trying to cover, and just go over the main spots. Just a simple click, and as you can see, it will remove those blemishes for you. So it will work with most of it. You don't want to do huge areas. If I give you an example, if you do a huge area, you can see what it's done to the quality there. So we just keep it the same size and as much as we can, as small as we can, but still covering them, and this will just give a nice bit of removal to these blemishes. So you can see that one left a big mark, that was a little too big. We don't need to worry too much because we are going to actually retouch the texture later on. But you can see if I just go like this, and it is making a bit of a mark there, so I'll show you the patch tool for that area. Got a couple here. So I'm not going to take too long with this, I'm just going to do it nice and quickly so you guys can get an idea of how we actually go about doing this. So at the top here, it's causing me issues, so I'm not going to use the spot healing brush here, I'm actually going to use the patch. So if I click on the three dots, look for the patch tool. Now this one is quite a useful tool. If we just highlight the area that we want to fix, that area there, and then we can then drag and change it with a much smoother area. So if I go there, let go, Ctrl D to deselect, and you can see it has actually done a pretty good job. Sometimes you do notice a little bit of quality loss, and I've got a few marks there, so I'm just going to go back to the spot tool, get rid of those, go over this, and already you can see it's done an okay job. It's not the best job just that, but it has done an okay job. If we look at the before and after, natural looking, but we can see where we've actually removed things. So what I'm going to do now is create another layer, and this is going to be the dodge and burn. So what I would recommend is we start with dodge. So if you click your three dots again, look for your dodge tool, scroll through, it's this one here. And then on the dodge tool, you want to focus on the darker areas. I'd set the exposure to 1%, keep the range on the midtones, and just go over the darker areas. And as we've only got 1%, we're not going to notice too much. If we just go through, and it should just make things a little better. You won't notice too much when you're doing it, but if I show you the before and after, you will notice a difference. So I just go over the darker areas of the skin. Only going to do this quickly, I don't want to spend too long on this. Just go over the darker bits, especially under the eyes there. So you may think with the setting so low it's not doing much, but if I just show you, you can especially see it there. It just brings it out a little lighter, and I'm going to do exactly the same now. So if I click on this and hold, we're going to go exactly the same, but this time we're going to use the burn tool. So again, just burn over there slightly. It just lightens up the dark areas without doing anything too drastic. As you can see, you can't really notice while I'm doing it, but then when we switch, you can notice a big difference. Just scroll through, go on there, and we'll just take a look at the difference. You can see it just lightens things up a bit. Now the next thing we're going to do is using the brush tool just for a little bit of painting. So we're not actually going to duplicate this time. We're just going to do a new layer. So if you click your new layer button in the bottom right, now we're going to use the brush tool, and we're just going to take small samples from different areas. So keep your opacity at 100, right click, make sure your hardness is set at 0, and I would just change the flow to something like 4 or 5%. And then what we can do here is if you hold down Alt, it allows you to take a sample. So you just take a sample and gently paint over. So you take that color and just gently paint over, and then it smooths it out, but it doesn't give you that huge smooth effect that you do get from over blurring, or if you use any sort of like beauty face feature, you get a lot of smoothing. This generally just gives you a soft bit of smoothing, covers up the texture a little bit, but does hide all the blemishes. So I wouldn't do it everywhere, just the places you feel do need a little more covering up. So on the cheeks here, just go through it and just make sure to keep pressing Alt and taking a new color, as you don't want the color to be too drastically different, otherwise it won't blend in nicely. So just under the nose there, gonna do a bit of smoothing. And you need to be careful, as we don't want to lose too much of the texture. Just gonna quickly rush through and get rid of some of these marks. Don't want to take too long, but obviously I want to show you how to do it naturally but do a decent job. So just a little bit on the chin here, take the darker bits, and up here, and you can change your brush size as you go. I've been a bit lazy there, keeping to the same brush size, but just use whichever brush size is suitable for the part you're doing. But already you can see it has made a huge difference, and we haven't done anything too drastic here. The nose is still a bit of a mark there, but I'll show you how we can fix that shortly. A much better way that will just change the texture without actually changing the colors. So that'll do for this bit here. If I just show you the difference, so that was before. This is where we are so far, so already quite a huge improvement. Now the next thing I'm going to do is actually take all of these layers and work on them as a whole. So the way we do this is click on the top layer, must be active, and then press Control Alt Shift and E. Once we do that, we get a new layer, and I'm just going to go and make 2 copies of that by pressing Control and J together. Now we've got these 2 layers, I'm going to have one as the blur layer, so I'm just going to rename this Blur. Oops, spelled blur wrong. And the next one, I'm going to just call it HF layer for high frequency layer. So what we're going to do first is remove the top layer. So just click the eye there so we can't see it. We're going to add a blur, and we're going to use a Gaussian blur. So if we go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And what we want to do here is not blur too much, but blur enough just so that we get some smoothness in the skin. Get rid of those blemishes. So that is actually going to be perfect for me. So that's a radius of 1.5 if you're following the same one. Click OK, and we can now activate the top layer, and on this we're just going to add the filter. So if we go image, apply image, and then you can see here layer merged, that's not what we want the blur layer. So in this layer, select the blur layer. We're then going to use scale 2, offset 128, and we're going to keep this to subtract. So you can see it sort of just still keeps the texture details. You can change the offset slightly. Maybe 130 is going to be better, so I'm going to go with 130. And then I'm going to set this layer here to linear light, and you can then see the image behind. So if we go like this, we've got the blur below, but we've still got the textures on top. And the most useful thing for this is you can either blur specific points even more, or I would actually suggest using the clone stamp tool for places like the nose. So what this will do is if you hold Alt, click your sample area and move where you want it, you can see we can then apply the texture, but it's not doing color here, it's only doing texture. So we'll keep the texture the same, but it won't affect the colors. So it just allows us to do things like smooth out the nose. Any other areas that need a little bit of smoothing, we can do it without ruining the colors of the face. So you can see under the eyes there, we can just do with a little bit of smoothing. You can see there, you could smooth that a bit more, but if you want it to look natural, then you don't want to take too much away from there. So we've already done quite a bit of smoothing. Then I would say maybe I should do a little bit on the forehead. And you can see the colors don't change, just the smoothness. So as you can see there, it's pretty much done. We've got rid of most of the blemishes. And one more thing you can do is if you want to smooth out any big areas, you can use the lasso tool. Make sure the blur layer is selected and just add more of a blur. So if we go here, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then you can just smooth it out that bit more, but don't go too far. As you can see, you'll then see the layer above. Just slight blurring. And that does the trick, but if you do too much you will notice the difference. But you can see already it is looking much better. If we do the before and after, that was before, That was after, so we've got rid of the blemishes and it doesn't look too bad. Then one final thing is it's a photo. I like to add filters. So if you just go down here for adjustment layers, I would go color lookup. One of my normal favorites here is actually the crisp warm look. So if I just press that, you can see it just gives the photo a much better look. That's a bit strong there. So personally, I drop that to 50% maybe. A little bit weak there. So we'll try 75%. Got that on there. And then this is also bringing up a couple of other little bits. So if we just maybe touch up that and there. That bit there. I'm just going to clone stamp a little bit more. Just because I'm noticing some marks there. Take it from there. Smooth that out a little bit. And there you can see it has made quite a bit of difference. So if we just look at the difference, that was before, that's afterwards. Still looks pretty natural, but of course you guys can do it exactly as much as you need to. If you want it super smooth, then just keep smoothing things. If you want it to look natural, then smooth that little bit less. But the difference there didn't take long, and I just thought I'd show you the different techniques you can use in order to do this. But that's pretty much it for today's video. So of course, if you've got any problems, any questions at all, just ask down in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, smash a thumbs up. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down twice, and I'll see you guys in the next one.